back to another edition of the Buy Low Fantasy Sports on 1490 Newstalk 1077. I'm Mitch, he's Bam. Bam, say hello.
Hey.
We're happy to be here. I want to thank you for tuning in. So before we get into Week 6 slate walk, I want to talk a couple of my key takeaways from Thursday Night Football. First of all, there was an obvious pass interference that happened with just a few minutes left in the game. New England's defensive back was literally holding the Giants wide receiver's arms down. I think it was Jonathan Jones holding down Darius Slayton's arms. Neither here nor there, but the ball hit the wide receiver in the face mask because of this. Now, of course, Pat Shurmur, the Giants head coach, he rightfully threw the challenge flag, wanted that looked at, and it was blatant. So I don't understand the point of this new rule, being able to review the pass interference, if they're not going to overturn the obvious ones. It just makes it too easy.
Doesn't make any sense.
Now, the second part has a lot to do with fantasy football. My second takeaway has a lot to do with fantasy football. What are you doing with Sony Michel? I was telling Bam last week, telling you that Sony was a perfect buy low candidate. You know, they were going to get this rushing attack going. Then I felt really proud of myself. I was really smug, acting like a giggling little schoolgirl after he put in his 20-point performance on Sunday night.
It's true, folks.
And like, haha, I was right. I was perfect. And then Thursday Night Football, the third-string running back, Brandon Bolden, he snakes a goal line touchdown. Tom Brady snakes a couple with his QB sneaks. You know, he QB sneaked from the 4-yard line to get a touchdown there. So now I'm backing off of him. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what the heck to do with him. What do you think?
This whole offense is in disarray. There's so many injuries, and the offensive lines are beat up. They're just trying to figure stuff out right now. So I think once this Patriots team, as it always does every year, eventually gets going in November, December, he'll be playable then. But in the interim, just pick your spots.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Week 6 of the NFL season is upon us. The following teams have their buys this week, so make sure to get these players out of your lineups, or don't, whatever. It doesn't hurt my feelings either way if you want to leave them in there. We have the Buffalo Bills, the Chicago Bears, the Oakland Raiders, and the Indianapolis Colts, all on bye. So there's no smoked brisket this week, man.
Son of a brisket. Oh, man. I guess I'm going to smoke my own to make up for it. It is chili season after all, so maybe I smoke a nice brisket, eat some, and then save the leftovers for some nice chili.
Nice. Just bring some to me, man. All right, let's kick this slate walk off for NFL Week 6. First game we want to talk is the first game that's going to be played, 9:30 a.m. game that's in London between the Panthers and the Buccaneers.
Ooh.
This game has a 47-point total, and the Panthers are favored by 2. What you got on it, Bam?
Well, since it's a 9:30 game, if you got anybody in this game, make sure you set them or remove them in your lineups before 9:30 when this game starts. So just a heads up there.
Right.
So you got CMC, he's got this insane workload, but then the Bucs bottled him up pretty well in Week 2. Then now in this matchup, you got Kyle Allen, who's been better than what a 50% Cam looked like that game. So I think this game will be a little bit different, but eerily the same.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, on the injury front, the Panthers will be without tackle Greg Little and guard Trey Turner versus a pretty good pass rush from the Bucs. But the Bucs can't cover anybody, so go ahead and fire up Samuel and DJ Moore and Olsen with confidence there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on the Bucs side, they're going to be without 2 linemen, right guard Alex Kappa and DeMar Dotson versus a really good pass rush from the Panthers. But they've been struggling to cover people the last few weeks. So what do you think about this Bucs passing game?
Yeah, I think Chris Godwin obviously has the best matchup in this game. We saw in Week 2, we saw him get loose, get a lot of work. But Evans is getting all the downfield work. And, of course, the Panthers are beat up in the back end of that secondary. In that Week 2 matchup, Jameis did target Evans downfield quite a few times, had him wide open, and just overshot him. I think a lot of that had to do with that illness that Evans was fighting through. I think it was some kind of weird stomach bug, some kind of weird flu. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was some illness that had Evans slowed down. And what makes this matchup so interesting to me is that you usually can't look at a previous game, and because usually games are like in week 2 and then week 12.
Yeah,
And
division games.
Yeah, and you see this discrepancy. How they're playing early in the season versus late in the season. You've got guys that step up, guys that are out, whatever the case may be. But these teams are relatively the same two teams that played in week 2. So it's just they know where to attack each other. They know everything about each other, right? I mean, they've played 4 times over the past 2 years now. So it's really interesting to me, the short turnaround, the 4-week turnaround time between the two games. So I think we know a lot about what this game is already going to look like.
For sure.
All right, moving on. Next game we have is the Bungles at the Ravens. This game has a 48-point total, and the Ravens are favored by 11. What you got on this one, Bam?
Well, we got more injuries to discuss. More injuries. The Cincinnati Bungles are going to be without 3 defensive linemen and 2 offensive linemen. And the reason that's a big deal for the Bengals is their defensive line guys that are out are more depth guys. So that means the starters are going to be in longer, going to get tired from getting pounded by these Ravens ball carriers. So I think this is where we're targeting the Ravens offense this week, is those ball carriers, Ingram and obviously Lamar Jackson, since they should wear them down by the fourth quarter. And then you got, on the Ravens side, you got Marquise Hollywood Brown. He's a game-time decision, so make sure you're watching those injury reports. So if you want a pass catcher with Lamar Jackson, I think Mandrews is the way to go. Possibly Miles Boykin, if you think the Ravens have to throw some. So maybe, but probably not. But possibly. So who knows? But yeah, who knows? Yeah, Boykin, if Hollywood's out, play Boykin, it'll be fine. And then on the Ravens side, they're missing cornerback Jimmy Smith. So that means Marlon Humphreys will kick into the slot to cover Tyler Boyd. So that leaves Auden Tate on the outside against some backup corners. So if you need to play a Bengal, Auden Tate's your guy. And then maybe take a stab at Joe Mixon from a volume standpoint, but I wouldn't expect a slate-breaking score from him. And then obviously the Ravens' defense is in play. Not much else to talk about when a team is favored by this much. So.
Right, yeah, no doubt. Double-digit favorites at home. Yeah, I don't think the Bungles get much going either.
No.
All right, moving on. The next game we have on the slate is the Seahawks at the Browns. This game has a 46-point total, and the Hawks are favored by 1. Bam, take it away.
Close game. Well, we got more injuries to talk about. More injuries. The Seahawks are going to be without center Ethan Poshik, and left tackle Dwayne Brown and left guard DJ Fluker are both doubtful, looking like both of them are going to sit. That's 3 of your 5 starters on the offensive line there.
Yes.
And then you couple that with Browns should be getting back both of their starting cornerbacks this week. Check those injuries before kickoff, obviously. So if you got that, plus this very beat-up offensive line for the Seahawks, I kind of want to go Browns defense here in daily fantasy and maybe a streamer in season logs.
Yeah, very sneaky.
That's the way to go. Very, very sneaky.
Yes.
And then before we get too far, Russ and the pass catchers, we've seen with this team, there's some very real volume concerns with the lack of pass play volume. But they've been real efficient when they do throw. I mean, Russ got 4 touchdowns on 23 attempts last week.
Yeah.
So I think if you got to pick some Seahawks pass catchers, Disley and Lockett are your guys.
Yeah.
So that raises the question, though, Mitch, what are we going to do about Chris Carson here?
Yeah, Chris Carson's a guy. A couple weeks ago, we had a lot of concern about him. He had the fumbleitis real bad. I think they got him a shot of penicillin, though. He hasn't.
Nice.
They cured that disease he had going. He hasn't fumbled in 2 games now. And he's gotten more than 25 touches in both of those games. So he's definitely in play. Not getting a lot of high-value touches like we've talked about in the past, but he is getting 25, 26, 27, 28 touches. And so, of course, with a running back getting that much work, he's definitely in play.
Yeah, and this Browns defense has been a sieve to running backs. Just ask the last few guys they've played. So
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely Carson in play there. Nice safe floor, even if the game doesn't shoot out. I think he'll get his run regardless. And then going back to the Browns side for a second, I think Odell Beckham is due for a huge game here after a couple duds. He's popping on some of those buy low models. Guys are getting a lot of volume but not a lot of production. And he's also got the squeaky wheel narrative for him. Like I said, he got those 2 duds, and they haven't been getting the ball. I think if the Browns are going to get right this week, they got to feed Odell Beckham. And then I think Landry's also playable, especially in PPR leagues on that side of the ball.
For sure.
And then if this game can stay close a bit, like if the Seahawks don't run away with it, I think Nick Chubb's also in play. He's getting great volume. He's getting those high-value touches. But that O-line is still bad, which kind of hurts his ceiling and the floor and ceiling of Baker Mayfield. So I think this game I'm going to take shots at. I don't think it's a very stackable game.
Right.
But there are some playable guys here. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 46-point total is a little high, personally, but I guess that's why I don't set the lines.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, we have the Texans at the Chiefs. 55-point total, the highest total on the slate, and the Chiefs are favored at home by 4 points. What you got on this one?
Well, believe it or not, we've got more injuries.
More injuries.
More injuries. This is a big injury slate, just in case anybody's wondering at home.
Yes.
So the Texans center, Greg Mance, is out. But luckily for them, Chiefs stud defensive tackle Chris Jones is also out. So that's a wash. And then you got on the Chiefs side, left tackle Eric Fisher's out again, which could mean some more pressure coming the way of a hobbled Patrick Mahomes. You got Sammy Watkins is doubtful. However, Tyreek Hill could be back this game. He's a game time decision. He's got to get some x-rays done or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of game time decisions. You got to watch this injury report, especially if you've got these guys in your season long or you want to play them in DFS. I mean, you got to look at this one extremely closely.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about the Texans' performance last week. We saw 2 players from that offense go over 40 points in fantasy last week in Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller, wide receiver.
It was the Chocalypse in DFS last week.
It was. Any chance for a repeat here?
No. Wait, no. They say it just never works out this way where you chase the points and you think, well, guy A did well last week, so therefore he's going to do well next week. It just doesn't work that way. There's teams match up differently with each other. Volume's not always the way it should be with these guys. So don't chase the points here. I mean, a good game's possible. Fuller's not going to get you 46 again. Deshaun Watson's not going to get you 41 again, but they could still get you respectable scores. So if you like them, play them. But another 40-point pop game like that, that's very rare. Don't expect that every week out of these guys.
Right, for sure. Now, sticking with the Texans offense, with wide receiver Kenny Stills being a game-time decision.
Another one.
Wide receiver Kiki Kuti, you were very high on him last week.
And he flopped.
I don't want to say he flopped because in PPR, he had a 15-point game. Yeah. So it's not a huge flop. I mean, it's not,
Yeah, if you didn't have Fuller, your play was a flop. So
yeah, right. But yeah, he's definitely in play again this week. Got a nice target share. And, of course, on the other side of the ball, going back to the Chiefs, wide receiver Byron Pringle, we saw him pop last week.
Oh, we're going to pop open that Pringle can, are we?
That's right.
Oh, nice.
Once you pop, you can't stop. He's definitely in play if Watkins is out for this game.
Yeah, a lot of injuries to watch here. So, speaking of healthy guys, though, running back Damian Williams, when he's been healthy, we've seen him lead the Chiefs running backs in snaps and touches, but more specifically in targets in the passing game. And this Texans defense gets roasted by pass-catching running backs. So he's definitely, if you're worried about playing him, I think this is the spot. On the other side of the ball, Carlos Hyde is getting the majority of the carries for the Texans, and the Chiefs are garbage versus the run. So I think both these guys are playable. maybe not a ceiling game for both guys, but someone's going to score points here. So they're going to get their share here, I think.
Yeah. And one question I have is, with Mahomes having that ankle injury, I wonder how much Andy Reid runs the ball to take some of that pressure off of him. If you think they run the ball a little more, maybe you can get to Shady McCoy. I'm not doing it personally, but if you have that belief, you think they want to protect Mahomes, they want to run the ball, kind of take him out of a lot of pressured situations, definitely get to Shady, I think.
All right. I'm not doing it.
But I'm not doing it. That's right.
Yeah, a lot of injuries and guesswork on this one, so really pay attention if you got any of these guys, and just really pay attention to the injury report coming out about noon tomorrow. Or today, excuse me. I don't know what day it is.
That's right.
Where am I?
All right, next game we have the New Orleans Saints at the Jacksonville Jaguars. This game has a 43-point total, and the Jaguars are favored by 2.5. The Jaguars.
The Jaguars.
2.5. This game has a few injuries, not quite as many as all those previous games.
Still a few, though.
Yeah, still a few. Go ahead, take it away.
So, more injuries, but a little less. New segment. So, Jalen Ramsey, after all his drama and missing the last few weeks, he's shaping up to be a game-time decision. He had a heart-to-heart with the Jaguars owner, and while he still wants to be traded, he agreed he needs to get out in the field and play there. So, he's game time with his back issue, so pay attention to that. And then with the Saints, we actually saw Teddy Bridgewater learn how to throw the ball down the field a touch. But that was mostly Mike Thomas making guys miss, making fools miss, actually. So, all that to say, if Ramsey plays, I think Ted Ginn is your guy. If he doesn't play, Mike Thomas is your guy. But regardless of all that stuff, Kamara, he's questionable with a rolled ankle from practice this week, but he should be good to go. But obviously pay attention to that injury report. But I think he's the number one play on this slate. What do you think?
I don't know if I would say number one.
The numero uno.
I don't think I'd say number one, but I like him quite a bit against this Jaguars defense. They've shown they're beatable in the running game, so I don't know that he's my number one, but he's definitely up there. And that's also important to note that the Saints get blasted by the slot wide receiver.
Blasted.
So this might be D.D. week.
Nice.
We might finally see D.D. Westbrook break out. He had 11 targets last week, turning into 7 catches for 70-something yards. And he's established that nice little rapport with Gardner Minshew. So what do you think about D.D. this week?
I like him. His average depth of target was real low to start the season. It was bad because Minshew just didn't know what to do with him, so they just kept throwing little checkdowns to him. And since that 0.8 ADOT week 1, it's steadily risen up to 7 now. So steadily getting better. So he's getting more downfield looks. He's getting intermediate looks. He's also getting those short plays. So he's getting a lot of good volume. And I think with this matchup, like you're saying, in this spot, the Jags are going to have to throw a bit, especially if Kamara on the other side of the ball blows up like I expect him to. I think that's a nice little DFS stack there, Kamara and Dede.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of Gardner Minshew, though, the Minshew mania is real.
What you going to do, brother?
The Jaguars are handing out over 35,000 fake mustaches this week to fans as they arrive at the stadium. And I think he's a decent streaming option this week. The guy hasn't finished with less than 16 fantasy points since he's took over that starting job. So he's definitely in play as a streaming option against the Saints defense that has some weakness in the back end. You also have O'Shaughnessy.
O'Shagnasty.
O'Shagnasty. You have him on injury reserve.
One of our favorite guys in the NFL.
Josh Oliver, the other tight end, he's out. So with Swain being the only healthy tight end, he might make a decent streamer option if you need one this week.
Yeah, and the tight end's not very deep this year. So you might have to go bargain bin shopping. But if he's a guy's going to get 100% of the snaps and maybe get you 4 or 5 targets, you can do worse.
Yeah, exactly. Who else you got on the Jaguars offense?
Well, Leonard Fournette is a guy we've been talking up for a bit. We trashed him in the preseason, but he's established himself as like a fatter version of CMC. Yeah, so he's got that nice high volume, safe floor. He's on like 95% of the snaps. He gets the targets. He gets all the carries. But the Saints defense, they're good against the run and weak against the pass. So this might be a spot where maybe he doesn't get the rushing yards, but maybe he gets you 6 or 7 catches to make up for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice, good floor game for him, but probably not a ceiling week. And I think he might be a guy to steal a touchdown here. I don't know, though. I don't feel like making a bold prediction on this one.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to hit from this game?
Yeah, the Saints defense is playable here because we got a giant mismatch between the Saints defensive line and the Jaguars offensive line. Big mismatch there in talent and pass rushing ability.
Yeah.
But I don't trust the Saints secondary. So do with that what you will. If you need a streaming defense, Saints are fine.
Yeah.
But don't expect a slate breaking score.
Yeah, I don't hate them, but yeah. All right, moving on. Next game we have is the Eagles at the Vikings. This game has a 44-point total, with the Vikings being favored at home by 3 points. What you got on this one, Bam?
So we got more injuries.
More injuries.
More injuries, yeah. So wide receiver Deshaun Jackson's going to miss his third or fourth straight game.
Yeah.
And this really puts the dampers on the ceiling of Carson Wentz. More on that later. Running back Darren Sproles is out. So we really should see a 1-2 punch at running back for the Eagles. Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders. I think both guys are playable. Right. Matchup's not great, but if they both get 15 touches, you could do worse. Right. You also got the Eagles are missing 2 cornerbacks, and they are just absolute, utter garbage against play-action passes. Yeah. And play-action passes is one of the few things Kirk Cousins does well. And his favorite target on play actions is one Mr. Stephon Diggs. Nice. So fire him up this week. I know he's been sucking this year, but I think this is a spike week for him. You got the squeaky wheel narrative. You got the good matchup. Nobody wants to play him because he's been not doing that well. This is the perfect time to sneak him in your lineups and get you that 30-point score. Not a 40, but a 30.
Yeah, relatively cheap in most DFS spots as well. So
yeah, nice little blow-up spot for him.
Yeah.
And you got this Eagles defense. It's a run funnel, so might not be the ceiling week for Dalvin Cook, but he's got a nice safe floor. On the Eagles side, you got Zach Ertz firmly in play since the Vikings just love to hand out production to the tight end. Additionally, Alshon Jeffrey, he's done well against Xavier Rhodes in the past, even going back to Chicago. So summing all this up, Wentz and Cuz have a nice safe floor. Kirk Cousins is one of my favorite DFS tournament plays this week. And I think both defenses are also in play, with the Eagles having a mismatch with their defensive line, offensive line, but see how it goes.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a quick break, check out the news from 1490 Newstalk, and when we come back, we're going to continue our slate walk for Week 6 of the NFL. Mm-hmm. Take her away. Back to the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show with Mitch and Bam. And we're going to continue our slate walk. Starting off with segment 2, we're going to talk the Redskins at the Dolphins. This
Yuck.
42-point total, and the Redskins are favored by 3.5 in what I'm lovingly dubbing the Turd Bowl.
You ain't wrong.
So real quick, I want to start this one off by telling a little bit of a story about me when I was in high school.
Oh, Lord.
So when I was in high school, I used to find like the nerdiest, ugliest dudes to be friends with. And this was because I was really like a 5. Like I was like a 5 or a 6. I was a okay looking guy, right?
On a scale of 1 to 10, yeah, you're about
a 5. Yeah. But hanging out with these dudes, it made me look like an 8 or a 9. So I pulled a lot of girls that were way out of my league. I mean, way out of my league. So wrapping this all up, what the heck does this have to do with what you're talking about, Justin? I think the Dolphins are the ugly kids in the NFL. I think any team that plays against them just looks way better than they actually are. So I think the Redskins may look a little bit better this week than they actually are. Probably not a lot, but what do you think?
Yeah. As far as analogies go, that's pretty apt. So on the news front here, head coach Jay Gruden was fired from the Redskins.
Yep.
And interim head coach Bill Callahan, who's bounced around the league for several years. You might remember him from such throwbacks as the early 2000 Oakland Raiders. He coached in Nebraska for a bit. He's been around.
Yeah.
He said they want to feature Adrian Peterson.
Nice.
Feature a 48-year-old running back.
He's going to have
and the matchups. Yeah, and what's funny is the matchup ain't bad. The Dolphins are not good against the run. So
right.
If you need a running back or a flex this week, AP's out there, pick him up. What's the worst could happen? He gets you 10 points.
Yes.
Continue with the Redskins. Case Keenum is back at quarterback. And I think that's good news for our boy, Scary Terry McLaurin. So I think he's firmly in play here against this Dolphins secondary. It's really beat up. They got 4 starters that are questionable. They got some linebackers. That's a really beat up secondary, even coming off a bye, and that's bad.
Yeah, for sure.
So Scary Terry should eat here. So if you don't want to play AP, play Scary Terry. You're all right.
Yeah.
And then on the Dolphins side of the ball, wide receiver Preston Williams, he's been a volume monster, dominating the team in targets and air yards. So if you want to play a Dolphin, that's why I call him the Dolphins, it's got to be him or Devontae Parker, because this Redskins defense has shown itself susceptible to the pass. And stream the Redskins defense if you're desperate. Anything to add to this game?
No, not at all. I think we've already spent too much time on it. All right, moving on. We have the 49ers at the Rams, 50.5 point total. Rams are favored by 3. What you got on this one?
Yeah, so we've seen the Niners run game dominate recently, but we got some more injuries here.
More injuries.
Yeah, so you got fullback Kyle Juszczyk, which is one of those Slavic last names that has way too many C's and Z's. And both starting tackles are out for this offense. So we're probably going to see a drop off here in the running game production. So if you're expecting another 300-yard performance, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, they're probably only going to get 225 now.
Yeah, 225 top. So based upon what we saw with Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman both playing Monday and both playing week 1, I think they're the 1-2 punch. They mix in Colonel Mostert on occasion. But those are your 2 guys.
I think he had like 5 or 7 touches Monday night. Not enough to.
Right. Yeah, not worth rostering, I don't think, unless he's a handcuff to one of your Niners running backs. So interesting is Jeff Wilson was getting all those green zone touches. Those are touches inside the 10-yard line. And it looks like Tevin Coleman is taking over that role, even though Breida had a few of those looks as well. So I think Tevin Coleman is the back to own here. If they get down into the green zone, they're going to get him the ball. But Breida and Tevin Coleman are both in play, even with those injuries, because on the Rams side of the ball, they also got some injuries. More injuries.
All right.
You got outside linebacker Clay Matthews, broke his jaw against the Seahawks. He's going to be out for a bit. He was really coming on as a pass rusher for them. And you got cornerback Aqib Talib is also out, which opens up the passing game, I think. If you think the run game falters a bit here, then you got Dante Pettis and Marquise Goodwin on the outside, when pretty good matchups. And then, of course, George Kittle is always in play, but he's also questionable with a groin injury. More injuries,
yes.
So I think Jimmy G's in play if you think the Niners running game falters. Otherwise, he's like a Russell Wilson. He's probably not going to get the volume to do anything here. So what do you think about this Niners offense?
Yeah, I think the run game falters a little bit. Sure, it takes a step back, especially with Juszczyk is just such an awesome run blocking fullback. And then both starting tackles out. I do think you see that drop off and run. Jimmy G, I think, he's going to have to earn his money at some point this season.
It ain't happened yet. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, right now we've just kind of seen him be a game manager, make the throws when he has to. But I think this may be a spot, especially playing against this Rams offense that's played pretty well, even in their losses over the past few weeks. So, yeah,
right.
I think they have it may shoot out a little bit.
Well, if it shoots out, one of the reasons it might is 49ers cornerback Witherspoon is out. He missed last week's game, too. Not that it mattered against a bungling Browns team. So I think all three wide receivers from the Rams are in play, even given the quote-unquote bad matchup with the 49ers, even though they haven't really played any wide receiver core, the talent of the Rams. And an interesting note about the Rams, head coach Sean McVay is 10-0 coming off of either a bye or after a Thursday night game.
Nice.
So I think the Rams probably get the win here. We'll see how it plays out, but I think it's a very good, very nice game stack for DFS. There's plenty of ways you can stack this game. Get some Rams, get some Niners. It's a very high total. It'll probably go overlooked with all the attention on the Chiefs and Texans game.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some other big news, injury news for this game.
Injuries, more.
And that's that running back Todd Gurley is doubtful. Make sure to check the injury report before kickoff. But he has a quad injury he picked up at practice this week. Now, despite and I've yelled at our listeners in the past.
Yeah, this is another we were right moment.
Yeah, I've yelled at our listeners in the past about this. Hopefully you listen to this because in the off season you had all the touts on this guy. I don't even remember his name now. Henderson, Darrell Henderson. He looks so amazing in the preseason. He's looked so, glowing reports coming out of training camp. And then he disappeared during the regular season. Malcolm Brown is the back to own should Todd Gurley miss time. He is the true backup, and I especially like him in this matchup if Todd Gurley can't go.
Right. Hopefully you listened to us, but we know some folks didn't. Our several listeners sometimes disagree with this, but that's all right. So don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy. Play Malcolm Brown. Don't throw in Darrell Henderson. I don't care what tout says this week. Play Malcolm Brown. He's going to get 90% of the run. Play Malcolm Brown.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else on this game?
Let's keep her moving.
All right, Falcons at the Cardinals. This game has a 51.5 point total, and the Falcons are favored by 2.5. You will never guess what the first thing out of Bam's mouth is going to be on this game.
More injuries. Even more.
Nice.
So this game's not too bad on the injury front, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah.
So the Falcons got two cornerbacks out, and you got Desmond Trufant and their slot cornerback, something Wilson. I can't say his first name. But luckily for them, on the other side of the ball, wide receiver Christian Kirk's a game-time decision, as is Damiere Byrd. So it's all a wash if all these guys miss.
Yeah.
So pay attention to that injury report when it comes out later. So this Cardinals defense is also very beat up. So I think from a who-to-play perspective, you can take a stab at Devonta Freeman or make another sneaky stab, a shiv, if you will, at Judge Ito Smith, as he's a guy that gets a lot of goal line carries. So we saw this Falcons passing game blow up last week. If you think maybe the running game gets to go in here, maybe there's some regression, maybe Judge Ito gets you 2 touchdowns. Could do worse.
Yeah.
And then with the Cards, running back David Johnson is a game-time decision. He had a back injury. So if he misses, running back Chase Edmonds is your guy. Hopefully you handcuffed him with David Johnson. If you didn't, go grab him if you have David Johnson.
Yeah.
And then for the wide receivers, the Falcons, you got Julio, obviously.
Yep.
And you got Calvin Ridley, maybe Sanu if you need a streamer. And this Cardinals defense is bad, really bad. So basically every Falcon's in play. And you just have to tell yourself a story on who you want to play.
Yeah.
And on the Cardinals side, you got the Falcons free safety, who's also really, really, really bad at football. So Larry Fitz should have no trouble getting open. The problem is we've not seen a ceiling from anyone in this Cardinals passing game yet. nobody's really shown that ceiling as Kyler's really struggled getting the ball downfield these last few weeks.
Yeah.
Really nice floor on Larry Fitzgerald. So he's a nice cash game play in DFS, and he's obviously a guy you're going to roll out this week.
Yeah, for sure.
And then continuing with the Falcons, you got tight end Austin Hooper, who has the nut matchup against this Cardinals defense, who is putrid against tight ends. Awful, god awful. Yes. Tyler Eifert bust in this spot last week, but for some unknown reason, he only got 27% of the snaps. So I'll take a half loss on that. I'll take a half L on that one.
Plus, Andy Dalton is no Matt Ryan. I mean, let's just be frank here.
Yeah, the Red Rocket's not Matty Ice.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Matt Ryan, though, now that we've talked about all of his weapons, I think he's a top 3 quarterback this week.
Ooh.
And if Kyler Murray can get his passing game going, he'd be up there too. He's the number 8 quarterback in fantasy this year, and we really haven't seen that ceiling game out of him. So if he can get if he can get that passing game going, we've already seen him do a lot of damage with his legs. 15 of his 23 fantasy points last week came on his rushing ability. So if he can get that passing game going, I think that he might be a top 5 play, top 7 play for sure this week as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree there, and I think this is another game that'll probably go a little overlooked with everybody paying attention to that Texans-Chiefs game. So from a DFS perspective, there's lots to like here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. Next game we have on the slate is the Cowboys at the Jets. This game has a 44.5 point total, and the Cowboys are favored by 7. What you got, Bam?
Oh, so we got just a few injuries in this one, only a couple. But the real big news out of this one is Sam Darnold, quarterback of the Jets, is back after his bout with mononucleosis, a.k.a. mono.
Yeah.
He's decided to leave those ladies of the night alone, those women of questionable character. Stop smooching. And he's going to rejoin the Jets organization this week.
Nice.
So he did practice all last week and all this week too, so he shouldn't be too rusty. So hopefully if he can shake off that rust real quick and his special spleen pad holds up, that wide receivers Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder get a bump here, I think. So these guys struggled real bad with the third string quarterback the last month that Darnold's been out. I think they get a nice bump here, even going against a pretty good Cowboys defense. They're still going to get their volume.
Yeah, for sure.
And then your buddy, running back Le'Veon Bell, is a guy getting a ton of volume. And the question is this going to be the week he goes off after what Aaron Jones did last week against his Cowboys defense? It seems logical, right? Well, if this guy blew up, then this guy's going to blow up too. That's probably not going to happen, but I think he gets a bump as well. Hopefully he can get in the end zone after having a dry spell the last month with Darnold out. So what do you think about, what are you taking away from this Jets offense with Sam Darnold coming back?
Yeah, I think it gives a bump to everybody in this offense, just like you mentioned, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder. One guy that was talked about a lot coming back from his suspension was Chris Herndon. Now he's got a hammy injury, so he's not going to play this week, possibly not going to play in week 7 as well. So, but I think it does give a bump to all those guys. Le'Veon Bell, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, all should see a nice spike in production.
And a guy we forgot who got 9 targets last week, Demaryius Thomas.
Yes.
Like it's 2012. Is back from the dead, and he got 9 targets last week. So if you're desperate for a wide receiver, you could do worse than him.
Yeah. My main concern with him is he just hasn't had that run with Darnold that the other guys have had.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, moving on from the Jets injury.
More injuries.
Yeah, more injuries perspective. On the Jets defensive side, linebacker C.J. Mosley is doubtful. Again, check the injury reports. But that's good news for Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard. But I worry that there's not going to be enough run there for both to get you a good fantasy score, especially if left tackle Tyron Smith, we talked about the splits last week with him being out, and the right tackle La'el Collins, if both of them miss this game, you worry that Zeke's not going to be able to get that run going.
Right, and we've seen that he gets enough touches to do damage for you, but we've not seen any good pop games from him this year, and that's one of the reasons is they're not featuring him in the passing game like they did last year. So he's not getting all those high value touches, and they've been really successful at blowing teams out for the most part. So he's just getting sat in the fourth quarter.
Right. What do you think about this Cowboys passing game?
I like all of them. This Jets defense is nothing to write home about, especially if the Jets offense struggles a bit. I think you'll get some short fields for Dak and Amari Cooper and Mike Gallup, and they've all been looking great. So I think all those guys are in play. They all blew up last week against the Packers defense, but this is a similarly good spot. Probably won't get the same ceiling score, but you get a good score here.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, I think the Cowboys defense is in play, especially if Darnold comes back really rusty, not up to speed yet. Could get a lot of turnovers, could get a little bit of a pass rush against him while he's kind of reacclimating himself to the NFL.
Right, I agree.
All right, moving on. Next game we have is the Titans at the Broncos. This game has a 40-point total, and the Broncos are favored by 2. What you got on this one?
More injuries, believe it or not. Even more. So the Titans are missing 2 pass rushers and Cameron Wake and Zuri Finch. They're both out. I think that gives a nice little bump to Joe Flacco in the Denver passing game. I can't believe I just said that. Speaking of the devil, Emmanuel Sanders is popping on a few buy low models this week after he really put up a dud last week in what was probably a decent matchup against San Diego. I think this could probably be the pop game for him. I think Sutton's also playable, and I think I'm sitting both Broncos running backs if I have the choice to, as I don't think there's enough to go around in this pretty difficult matchup against this Titans defense. But famous last words, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important to note, though, that the Titans are giving it up to the tight end this year. So Noah Fant is in play. I just have a little bit of concern about his volume. He's only been getting around 35% of the snaps, just a handful of targets on a weekly basis. But the Titans do give it up. They've given it up at least a touchdown or 100 yards receiving every week this year to the tight end position.
So what you're saying is stack Joe Flacco, Emmanuel Sanders, and Fant DFS. Got it. Setting my lineup now.
Perfect. On the Titans side, Adam Humphries is also popping on some of those buy low models. So if you think this game goes over a bit, right, 40-point total is pretty low. If you think it goes over a little bit, he's definitely in play. And same can be said for Marcus Mariota and Corey Davis. I left out one guy that blew up 2 weeks ago, A.J. Brown. He's just not getting the volume to be a consistent fantasy scorer yet. So definitely a guy I'm looking for, especially in like dynasty leagues. I love A.J. Brown, but he's just not getting that production right now, or getting the volume right now.
Yeah, we see this Titans offense, how they like to play. They like to slow the game down. They like to hand it off to Derrick Henry. And if unless there's a shootout, they're just not getting the volume. Yep. So we have to project a shootout here if you want to play him. But speaking of Derrick Henry, if you make the mistake of looking at season-long stats instead of looking at a 2-3 week rolling sample, you'd see that the Broncos give up a ton of fantasy points to running backs. However, they made an adjustment last week to beef up their defensive line and their linebacker. They swapped 2 guys out who are a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of success stopping the run against the Chargers. And I think this is the reason why, based upon that adjustment, I don't want any part of Derrick Henry this week. He's got a nice volume-based floor, but probably not the week for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, just like you mentioned, I think they said that they added somewhere around 250 pounds of dudes there in the middle.
Yeah, they put some big old fat guys on that line. You know?
Yeah, and so it worked really well to shut down. I mean, Melvin Gordon still had a nice game with 16 carries for right at 80 yards. So not a terrible game, but I want more from a running back position than 8 fantasy points. And I think that's probably right in line with what you'll see for Derrick Henry this week. Unless he pops for a touchdown, in which case you get 15 points. But I just don't see it here.
Mitch is good at math, everyone.
Now,
then
both
both.
defenses.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but I think both defenses are playable here, as both quarterbacks have shown to be very mistake prone. So, yeah, if you wanted to not play anybody from either offense and just go defenses in this game, I wouldn't be mad at you.
No, I would.
All right, moving on. Let's talk Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football.
We got the Steelers at the Chargers with a 41.5-point total. Chargers are favored by 7 at home. Wait, let me guess. More injuries.
Yeah, I think just like the audience, I'm getting tired of it at this point. So.
It's become the theme of this show, though.
Yeah, exactly. There, we get tired of it just like the audience. So we get tired of hearing our own voices too, don't worry.
Right.
So the Chargers are missing their Pouncey, Mike. He's out for the year, but his brother, the other Pouncey, who plays the Steelers, is playing. So in the Pouncey Bowl, only one's playing.
Nice.
And the Steelers are on their 45th option at quarterback. But I think Mason Rudolph said that he's still available in an emergency situation, and the punter's the real backup QB. Who knows? So a fourth-string quarterback, good luck if you got any Steelers.
Yeah, you got a guy that used to play wide receiver in high school, and for some reason he's now the fourth-string quarterback for the Steelers. Nice.
Oh, man.
I love it. So, yeah, I think one of the big things that came out this past week is that Jalen Samuels is out for at least a month. So this backfield is all Connor now. We saw a couple weeks ago where, they had a nice little 65-35 split going between Connor and Samuels. It's all Connor now. So that's one guy that really in this offense should have a nice volume-based floor. The problem is you got a struggling running back now playing with a four-string quarterback. I don't love it.
No. And if you can, sit all the Steelers pass catchers. But if you put a gun to my head, I'd say, well, I don't know why you do that. It'd be kind of rude. But Juju is probably the best spot here. He's just an elite talent, so you got to play him. And speaking of elite talents, Keenan Allen is going to smash here. He's going to crush. We talked about this in the past, but the Steelers defensive coordinator is a dunderhead, and he likes to put linebackers on slot receivers for some ungodly reason. Yeah. And Keenan Allen is probably the best slot wide receiver in the league. So he's just going to crush here because the Steelers defensive coordinator is just dumb.
Nice.
And then you got the whole Eckler-Gordon situation. You can play both, but they're still trying to figure out their roles. Eckler's leading the conference in receptions, so definitely fire him up at PPR.
Yep.
And then lastly, Hunter Henry may be returning from injury this week. Pay attention to that. But we don't know what his role is going to be after 5 weeks out. He could play 25% of the snaps, could play 50. Who knows? So I'd probably sit him this week just to see what his role is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a stash guy, though, I think.
Stash him up.
Important to note, too, that the Chargers head coach, offensive coordinator, talked about getting Gordon more reps this week. We saw him get 16 touches last week, so definitely important to note. You kind of watch how Gordon's carries and Eckler's passing game work, how that plays out. See if we can kind of see how that role is going to play out moving forward. And I think the Chargers defense is definitely in play here against a four-string quarterback. So, yeah, it's play your Chargers and their defense and leave all your Steelers at home. Yeah,
I like it.
All right, moving on to Monday Night Football. We have the Lions. Go ahead.
Monday Night Football, as Frank Gifford used to say.
We have the Lions at the Packers. 45.5-point total. Packers are favored by 4 at home. Injuries. The main one is Devontae Adams will be out, and the Lions look pretty healthy.
Yeah, this is a pretty quick game. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. So Lions are coming off a bye. They're going to feed Kerryon Johnson, so obviously play him, all formats. The Packers, normally stout pass defense, gave up a ton of production. The Cowboys. So I think if you think this game shoots out, Galladay and Marv Jones are in play. On the other side of the ball, Devontae Adams being out obviously hurts the Packers passing game. The Lions run a ton of man coverage, and the Packers been struggling with man coverage this year, getting open against it.
Yeah.
So if MVS is Marquez Valdes-Scantling has got to beat man coverage here. I don't think he will.
Right.
And then the Packers running backs, you got Aaron Jones, had a monster game, but Jamal Williams is back. So I think both are in play here against this Lions run defense, not looking that great. Plus, the Packers want to run the ball. So
right.
To summarize everything, Staff and Aaron Rodgers are both playable, but especially if you think this game chews out. So you just got to make a stand. How do you think this game's going to play? That'll tell you who to play.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's take her on home. This has been the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show with Mitch and Bam on 1490 Newstalk 1077. We appreciate you tuning in, and y'all take care.
Bye.